In those 3 years, did you have contact with the outside world? Did you know?
If I bumped into people...
Did you know Drake?
No, I knew Drake before, because...
But you had never heard Started from the Bottom or none of that?
No, that was far later on, yeah.
That was all new to you.
3 years of no Drake, and then, catching up. It's been good catching up.
Pleasure to meet you, man.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much for having me.
Big honor. These conversations, it's definitely for the people watching, but it's for me too. I'm a very curious person. So I like to learn. I've read a bunch of your things. I've not read the book yet. I'm looking forward to reading the book. What's the best thing you think I should take, or the main thing I should take from your book?
I'd say it's the realization I came to while I was writing the book. So I think we live in a society where romantic love has been put on a pedestal. People think they've either made it in love if they have a romantic partner or not. And I actually think that we've been sold a lie, because I don't think romantic love is the deepest, most genuine form of love. I think the most deepest, genuine form and expression of love is people doing something for their community. What someone does for their family, what someone does for their town, what someone does for their people. I think we need to redefine what's at the top of our pedestal of love, and how do we reconnect with the idea that love has so many more opportunities when it's not just romantic. Love with our children, love with our friends and family, love as service.
How do you specifically, or how does a person balance the idea of service and giving back when, if you grew up like I did, and I'm gonna ask you later how you grew up, I didn't have shit, right? So it's like, I gotta actually help myself first. That rule of put your mask on first. How do you find the balance of like service and helping people? But I really gotta help myself first, because I just gotta figure out a way myself.
Yeah, so I think we live in a world that's only good at understanding binaries or extremes or black and white. So we think that you either have to take care of yourself or you go and serve others. So often what happens is people either become selfish or they sacrifice themselves and they lose themselves in the service of others. The goal of self-care, the goal of putting your mask on, is so that you can help others. So putting your mask on first is only half the task. The rest of the task is to say, who else am I going to help? So I think instead of looking at them as either or as extremes, we're actually going, if I take care of myself, if I can find a foundation, if I can create a sense of stillness in my life, then I can go and expand that to others. And I think we do a disservice to ourselves if we don't set ourselves up first, because then what are we going to give to people? But if we set ourselves up, but then we don't give to people, then we're also doing a disservice to ourselves and humanity.
I just learned something. That's why I love doing this show. It's like, yeah, you're right. I've thought about it as I've always said selfish is not a bad thing. I think selfish gets a bad rap, but
I agree.
Selfishness or self-care on the path to service, self-care on the path to service is a good way to think about it. But we're all humans, right? And on that self-care path to get to service, a lot of people sometimes get drunk on self-care, right? It's a drug. So for you, how did you not get intoxicated or drunk on the feeling of self-care and taking care of self and more for self?
I was really fortunate, and I can't take the credit for that. I have to give the credit to the people that I met. And for me, when I was 18 years old, I met a monk who was living and breathing what I'm even trying to explain right now. And so what I attempt to try and share and spread to others, he embodies it in the deepest way. And he was saying that the greatest gift you can give to someone, or the greatest gift in life, is to use your skills in the service of others. And I think, to be honest, and you know this, everyone who's achieved the highest forms of self-care or stability, after a while, you have to do something with it. I don't think there's anyone in the world who's fulfilled simply by taking care of themselves. At the same time, I don't think anyone's fulfilled if they're just trying to help other people. I think it is that symbiotic relationship between the two. And so for me, I saw that in an individual. I saw a role model. And I think seeing it in a human made me believe it was possible.
You met that monk when you were 18. You went and lived with the monk. But who were you before that? You grew up in London?
Yeah, I was born and raised in London.
And what type of person were you?
So up until 10, 11 years old, I was probably an obedient kid, teacher's pet.
Is that an English thing? And where are your parents from originally?
My parents, so my mother was born in Yemen, but she's Indian, and she moved to England when she was 16 years old. And my dad's from southern India. It's do well at school, behave really well, be obedient, and life's gonna be great. And when I got to 14, I was like, this doesn't work. I'm not having any fun.
That's why you're on this show. You're a maverick. Exactly.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not having any fun. This doesn't work for me anymore. We've got to try new things. And I got involved in all the wrong circles. And now I realized that I was getting involved, with the wrong people, wrong circle.
Wrong like what?
I don't know, getting into trouble, doing stupid things at school, getting into fights, just getting into things that none of your parents want you to get into.
Got it.
I was looking for a thrill in life. Like I felt like I was just looking for that spark. And at that time, the spark came from doing stupid things. It didn't come from doing something meaningful. Now I realize that the thrill can come through purpose. It can come through being creative. It can come through collaborations and doing incredible things with your life. But at that time, I was just going down the wrong path. And I was lucky that I was wise enough to not go too far. And I think that came from my parents' strong foundation of wanting me to be obedient, but I was rebellious enough to not follow everything they said.
Yeah.
And it was, again, that perfect balance of like, it's not either or. Like if you're too rebellious, you can go off the tracks and go off the rails. And at the same time, if you're too obedient, then you're never gonna do anything interesting. And so I think some sense of structure is important for spontaneity and for creativity.
When you weren't obedient to them, did they come down hard on you, or did they let you forge your own path?
I think they tried, but I think that's when I started pushing back. And I was like, I'm not listening to you. I'm not gonna do what you say. I think my parents at one point just started giving me freedom because they could see that I wasn't gonna settle for less than that. And I think for me, from 14, I just started making all my own decisions. I started working when I was 14, started paying for things that I was trying to do when I was 14. I was working my way up. I paid for myself since that day because I just kept moving jobs. And so I think I started to take control and autonomy over my life. And my parents kind of backed off and just said, all right, let him do his thing.
And how did you arrive at the decision at 18, which is still very young, to go live with the monk? And how long did you do that?
When I was 18, when I met him, I wanted to do it, but I was at college. So I was like, I'm gonna finish college.
How'd you meet? It's not, I've never met a monk. I met a lot of people, but I never met a monk.
Yeah, definitely, and neither had I.
By the way, I didn't think monks left. I didn't know monks traveled. Like, you're not gonna bump into a monk like at the Grove in LA, right?
Not at the Grove, not at the Grove, yeah, not at the Grove. No, so I was always going to hear people speak. So as you were saying, like celebrities, CEOs, athletes, I loved hearing people's stories. So I'd go to events, and there was an event where a monk was invited to speak, and I was just like, why am I gonna go to this event? Like, who cares about a monk? I'd never met one properly either, and I was like, I'm not gonna learn anything from him. And I remember saying to my friends, I'd only go if we went to a bar afterwards. Like, that was like my level of who I was before that point. My friend said, sure, we'll go to a bar afterwards. And so he was invited to speak at an event, and yeah, monks do, not all monks, some monks travel. In the Hindu tradition, they travel often.
Do they travel to spread their learnings?
Correct, yeah, to teach, when they're invited, they'll travel to give wherever they're called. They're not going there by their own accord. They're called somewhere or invited somewhere, and so they'd come on. At that point, I wanted to do it, but the monks were very much like, finish your degree, like think about it. This shouldn't be a decision taken lightly.
You met the monk and was like, yo, I want to come.
I wasn't like, I want to do this forever, but I started spending my summer and Christmas vacations with him. So while I was at college, I would spend my summer and Christmas vacations visiting in India.
In India,
yeah.
Got it.
And then when I graduated from college, I then lived as a monk in India and the UK and Europe for 3 years.
You wrote a book about that? That's
correct. That's Think Like a Monk. That's my
But you stayed there for 3 straight years?
3 years, but I was traveling during that time. And so as a monk, and so I shaved my head, I wore robes, I lived out of a gym locker, I slept on the floor.
Did you go there in search of something, or you went there with a blank palette, like, I'm just taking it all in?
I went there for 2 reasons. One was, when I met the monks, the thing I saw in them was that they'd gained a sense of being able to navigate envy, jealousy, greed, and ego. And I thought, wow, I've never met someone who's mastered the mind and their emotions. That was very attractive.
Jealousy, greed, envy. Well, you lived in London. It's hard to avoid those.
Exactly. It's hard to avoid them anywhere in the world. And by the way, I still deal with those today. It's not that I'm perfected that, but the idea that I was around people who spend their life trying to master these emotions. And the other side was, they wanted to do something good for the world. And I thought, what better thing to do with my life than learn to master the mind and try and serve others.
So 18, you go to the monastery, you live like a monk. You stay for 3 years, which is a long time, 36 months. But then you got to come back into the world. You got to leave the monastery. How hard was that adjustment? Growing your hair back was one of them.
That was the most painful
That worked,
part.
by the way, that worked beautifully.
Yeah, but the growing months were painful. I had some terrible pictures in between. That was the hardest thing, one of the hardest things I'd ever done, because, you know, it's really interesting. My story now has become somewhat of like, oh, wow, it's so cool. You went and became a monk and this. When I chose to become a monk, it was the uncoolest thing you could think of. Like, all my friends were like, what are you doing, dude? Like, we're going to go off and make money. Like, what are you going to do? My friends were like, Jay, I'm like dating this girl and doing this. Like, why are you going to be celibate? Like, so when I became a monk, it wasn't like, Jay, you're so cool. One day you're going to write a book about, like, you know what I mean? It was like, Jay, you're a loser. Like, why would you do this? My family was like, you're letting us down. People were saying you've been brainwashed. So when I left, it was kind of like I just proved everyone right. So I came back to a community where everyone was like, we told you so. We knew you would make it. What are you going to do with your career now? And I was applying to jobs, and I got rejected from 40 companies before an interview because, surprise, surprise, who wants a former monk as an employee? Everyone's like, what are you going to do? Be quiet and sit still? Like, we don't need that. And so there was this whole stress for me because I was like, gosh, did I just waste 3 years? Like, everyone's moving on with their life. And I'm a 26-year-old guy living in my parents' loft with $25,000 worth of debt from my student loan. I remember the first month, all I did was listen to Drake, eat Cadbury's dairy milk chocolate that I hadn't eaten for 3 years, and watch How I Met Your Mother, and I caught up on all the seasons that I'd missed out on. That's literally the first thing I did for the first month. And I fell back into all my old habits. I wasn't meditating, I wasn't thinking about all that stuff. And then a month in, I was like, I have got every skill to get myself out of this rut. I've been trained in every mental skill I possibly need to get out of this. I just have to put it into practice. And so I started to put all the monk training back into practice. And I really believe that everything I've achieved since then has come because I put the monk mindset into practice. And that's why I say to people, you don't have to live like a monk to think like a monk, because I'm not a monk anymore. And when I left, those were the principles mentally that changed my life.
The idea of like, and you've talked a lot about this, like finding your purpose and then balancing that with ambition. How did you get to that place?
You know what? It's taken me a long time to figure it out, and I'm still figuring it out. But I think what's happened is that we kind of look at life, again, it's always this extreme paradigm. We think it's like you're either ambitious or you're spiritual, right? Or like you work hard or you're lazy. And what I found, at least in my own journey, was that I wanted to find ways of bringing the two together. And today I find strategy and sincerity can go hand in hand. I don't think
strategy
and sincerity. You can have a really sincere intent
with
ambition. Strategy. Yeah. I think you can be assertive and be affectionate at the same time. I think you need both. I think as humans, we prefer to put people in boxes. And so even myself, for a long time, I was like, I can't be in business. I am a monk. I used to be a monk. I have to just be thinking in that way. And I started to realize very quickly that I couldn't have an impact on the world. One of the biggest vehicles for impact in the world is business, is entrepreneurship. And so I had to recognize and reconcile, even till this day, I'm still figuring it out, but I definitely know the answer's in the middle, and the answer isn't on either of the sides.
I think about this a lot.
So do I, man. I think about it. This is what I spend half my day thinking about, because, you know, I grew up in a house where money was seen as a bad thing.
Really?
Like if people had money, it would be like, oh yeah, they did something dodgy, or, you know, they're doing something, they're not paying their taxes, that's why they have money. And so I grew up in an environment where money was seen as a negative thing, and I grew up with a lot of those beliefs, only to then realize that to make shifts in the world,
you need money.
You need money and entrepreneurship and business. And so I've been redefining my own relationship with money and business.
Do you speak to the monks about this topic?
All the time.
And what's their POV on it?
Yeah, so the philosophical take, or at least their take, is that nothing is good or bad, it all depends on how you use it. So their belief is that the world spends all their time idolizing and demonizing things. So we idolize money or we demonize it. Some people are chasing it, and some people are condemning it. And the point is, money, fame, or anything in the world, it's simply energy, and it's whether you're using it for a higher purpose or whether it's using you. Now, that's a really fine line, and it's a really difficult challenge. But the idea is that trying to figure out that challenge is far more of a fulfilling and fruitful life than trying to abstain from it and stay away from it.
For sure. When you think about success, how do you define success for yourself or find it? And does it have to be like, that was a win, that was a loss?
Success to me is, I've simplified it as this, at least for me. Success to me is how can I use my gifts in the service of others. Success to me is how much am I using what I'm passionate about to serve other people. And that to me is the greatest success. And of course, I love doing that at scale. I'd love to do that in bigger, better ways because I love seeing billions of people have an opportunity. Like you said, you'd never met a monk growing up, neither had I. And I always ask people, who's your monk? Like, who's the person you haven't met yet that could change the trajectory of your life?
So is what you love helping other people?
What I love is making complex ideas simple. That's what I actually love.
How did you figure that out?
Years of trying to figure it out. So I spent a lot of time on that. So I think the only way you figure out what you love doing is by doing a lot of things. I don't think there's a shortcut. I don't think there's a cheat code. I don't think there's an easy method. For me, I know that if I'm reading books, if I'm studying, if I'm experimenting, if I'm observing human behavior, and I'm learning from that, and then I'm trying to teach it and share it, that's where I get a kick out of that. Like, I could do that all day long. I love studying human behavior. I love studying, watching what people do, and then helping people learn from that. When I do that and I use that to help others and it can improve other people's lives, that's when it becomes a purpose.
I hear people talk about that concept a lot. Find your purpose, find your purpose. I know things I'm passionate about, I love and care about, but how do you know? But there's a couple things. How do you know, like, oh, that's just something I love, that's something I like, that one's my purpose when you look inside yourself?
I think you just beautifully explained it. It actually starts with as basic as curiosity and like. I think the problem is we're trying to fall in love before we even like anything. So purpose is like this really big, lofty concept that's really hard to understand. And if I'm completely honest, purpose is so much about collecting all the different experience you had. So I'll give you an example. For me, I grew up as someone who loved spoken word and loved rap music and loved being creative. I loved art. That was my favorite subject at school. I didn't know that was going to be a part of my purpose, but I collected that skill. Then I went into the world of business. I learned about strategy, finance, company building, took all of that. That wasn't my purpose. I didn't even enjoy it. Then I got to live as a monk, took all of this wisdom that I learned and gained from that. Then I came into media, and today I'm like putting all of that together. That's where my purpose is. So what I encourage people to do is stop thinking about your purpose, just start collecting experiences and skills. Wherever you are right now, whatever your job you're in, if you just collect and gain and learn, one day you're gonna be able to connect all the puzzles and the pieces of it, as opposed to trying to figure out the big puzzle piece. Like if we were doing a puzzle right now and you were like, what's the picture? You're never gonna figure it out. Just collect each piece and start putting it together.
Once you find your purpose, have you experienced or felt self-doubt at all? Or like, I don't know, I'm not sure if this is my purpose or what I'm doing here?
All the time. So, and I think that's why the language, right? I don't think we find a purpose. I think we're constantly uncovering it, constantly peeling back the layers. Like, it's not something you found. You're like, oh, I found my keys. Now I got them. I know where they are. Purpose doesn't work like that. Purpose is this ever-expanding, ever-growing thing that's changing shape and shifting. We've got to let go of this mindset that we've developed, and it comes from school. You finished your homework. You finished the exam. You finished the class. You're now in the next class. Life doesn't work like that. You're never finished. And I think we keep looking for the finish line, the finished product, the finished article. Everything's unfinished.
Are there two things that you can give me and people watching, two principles, two things as which I love, the thing that I'm gonna take for this road on self-care for service? Is there two things I should think about or two ways I should think about that path and that journey for myself?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm glad that resonated. So I'd say the first thing is research shows we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts per day. And for most of us, 80% of those are negative and 80% of those are repetitive. So most of us are having the same negative thought from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. I think what I would leave you with is you can't master 60 to 80,000 thoughts. That's a fool's game. but you can master the first thought of the day and the last thought of the day. And I think if we start programming and coding our first thought and the last thought of the day for self-care and service, then every thought in between will start to become infused with that energy. So instead of your first thought being, gosh, I've got a million emails to look through, again, it's negative. Or your last thought being, God, I'm just sick and tired of whatever I just had to finish off. If your first thought was, I'm gonna do something that takes care of me today, and your last thought was, I'm so glad I gave a piece of me today. If those were your two thoughts, I think it's gonna create a really meaningful life.
And I can't tell you how much I learned from this. So thank you very much, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And and I just wanna say I'm grateful for, you may be figuring it out, but I'm grateful from the outside observing, this is the first time we met, but I'm grateful observing from the outside how much of a purpose and service I think you are doing through the content you create, the work you create, the way you and your team carry yourself. Like, I think that is having an impact. It is purpose-based. It comes across very naturally. I don't think it's something you're far from at all.
Thank you so much.
For whatever that's worth.
Appreciate it. That's worth a lot. Appreciate it. Thank you.